The rain poured mercilessly over the old abandoned railway station. Beneath a broken bench, a frail boy curled up, shivering in the cold. His clothes were torn, his face smeared with dirt, and his stomach ached from hunger. His name was Arian, a 10-year-old orphan who had never known the warmth of a home or the love of a family. He didn't remember his parents, only faint memories of his mother's soft voice and his father's strong arms lifting him in the air. But those memories had faded like a dream. One day, they were gone, leaving him to face the world alone. The orphanage where he was sent was no less than a prison. The caretakers were cruel, food was scarce, and beatings were common. When he turned 8, he could no longer endure the abuse. One night he climbed out of a broken window and ran until his legs gave up, ran until he collapsed near the railway station. For the next 2 years, the streets became his home. He begged for food, slept in gutters, and fought stray dogs for scraps. The world was a brutal place for an orphan, but Arian had one thing that kept him going, a burning desire to change his fate. Every day was a battle. The hunger, the beatings from older street boys, the cruel laughter of strangers, it all became a part of him. He learned to dodge the police, who often rounded up street kids and sent them to abusive shelters. He stole fruits from vendors, cleaned tables at roadside stalls, and collected plastic bottles to sell. But Arian was different from other street kids. He wanted more. Every night after the city went to sleep, he would sit outside a government school, peeking through the window to see the teachers writing on the blackboard. He would copy the letters in the dirt with his fingers, trying to understand. He had no books, no pencils, but he had curiosity. One day, as he was watching from the window, a teacher noticed him. Instead of chasing him away, she walked up to him and said, "Do you want to learn?" His heart pounded. He had never heard those words before. No one had ever asked him what he wanted. With tears in his eyes, he nodded. From that day, every evening after school, Miss Ananya taught him under a streetlight. She brought him old books, a notebook, and a pencil. Arian, the boy who had never held a book before, now spent hours practicing letters, solving math problems, and reading whatever he could find. Life was still hard, but for the first time, Arian felt a sense of purpose. He studied during the day and worked at night. He took up odd jobs, cleaning tea stalls, carrying sacks at the market, polishing shoes, anything to survive. But life was unforgiving. One night, as he was returning from work, a gang of older boys stopped him. They had seen him studying and hated the idea of one of them dreaming beyond the streets. "You think you're better than us?" one of them sneered. Before he could react, they beat him mercilessly, leaving him bleeding on the ground. Arian lay there, pain surging through his body. The thought crossed his mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was nothing. But then he remembered Miss Ananya's words. "You have a gift, Arian. Don't waste it." He picked himself up, wiped his tears, and limped home. He wasn't going to let the world break him. Years passed, and Arian's determination only grew stronger. By the age of 15, he had completed his basic education with Miss Ananya's help and wanted to attend high school. But school required fees, and he had no money. One day he saw a newspaper article about a scholarship exam for underprivileged students. The prize? Free education. This was his chance. For months, he studied every second he could. He memorized formulas while polishing shoes, solved equations in his head while carrying bricks, and read books under streetlights. The day of the exam arrived. Dressed in a torn but neatly washed shirt, Arian entered the exam hall. He felt like an imposter among well-dressed students with expensive books. But he reminded himself, knowledge doesn't belong to the rich. It belongs to those who work for it. He wrote the exam with everything he had, and then he waited. Days passed, then weeks. Then one morning, as he was cleaning tables at a tea stall, a boy ran up to him with a newspaper. His name was in it. He had topped the exam. Arian had won the scholarship. The scholarship changed everything. Arian was enrolled in one of the best schools. He was given books, a uniform, and for the first time a desk to sit at. But being in school wasn't easy. The rich students mocked him for his background. A beggar among scholars, they called him. But Arian didn't care. He studied harder than anyone, waking up at dawn, staying up late, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. Ms. Ananya was always there, guiding him, reminding him of how far he had come. By the time he graduated high school, he was the top student in the state. Universities offered him full scholarships. He chose to study engineering, a subject he had fallen in love with through books. College was another battlefield, but he had fought bigger wars before. He worked part-time to support himself, studied relentlessly, and after years of struggle, he graduated with honors. Then came the biggest moment of his life, a job offer from a top multinational company. The boy who once slept under railway benches now had an office in a skyscraper. Years later, Arian stood on a stage, addressing thousands of students at an educational conference. He was no longer a nameless orphan, he was Dr. Arian Malhotra, CEO of his own company and a philanthropist funding education for street children. With tears in his eyes, he said, "I was once a boy with no name, no home, no future. But I had a dream, and I refused to let the world take it from me. If I can rise from nothing, so can you. Never let your past define your future." The auditorium erupted in applause. Among the crowd, an old woman wiped her tears. Miss Ananya had lived to see her student become a legend. And somewhere, in the same railway station where his journey began, another orphan boy sat under a broken bench, dreaming of a better life inspired by the story of Arian Malhotra.